Your list of achievements have been covered time and time again, so I think I'll try to describe it this way. On the 17th of November 2001 marked the start of an international career that spanned 13 years, 11 months and 4 days. And by the end of that, it was generally agreed that Richie McCaw was the greatest All Black of all time. Your early years in the All Blacks becoming a leader, 2004, as everyone knows, was a huge transition period where you were charged, or part of the leadership group, charged with shifting some mindsets. Are you able to speak to that?
If I go back to those sort of the 2002, 2003 period, all of our Super Rugby franchises, we were together a long time, we had a full pre-season. It felt like the culture of the team and how you did things was superior to what the All Blacks were. You know, each year it was sort of come together and go, okay, what are we going to do this year, rather than sort of being able to build on previous campaigns or whatever. The first year's always easy as a player, you know, you're excited, you want to get in there and prove yourself, but you've got to actually reassess once you've become an All Black, what it is, the drive and the thing that's going to make you not get complacent and have your level of performance just level off, because there's no doubt at all that what gets you there doesn't mean you're the finished product. But having a team that's demanding people to get better, and that started to drive those sort of desires to look at how you can be better, how you can fit in, and we needed everyone to be contributing to that. And I think that's the thing that changed. Someone said to me when I played my first handful of tests, you know, is that good enough? I go, what do you mean? They said, well, you're an All Black now. Does it really matter what happens from here? If you want to be around in that, you know, what's the next level? I said, well, you want to be a good All Black or a great All Black. What does that mean? You go, well, cheapers, if you thought about that, it means you have to play for a long time and you have to be a lot better than you are now. And I guess the other things for me that certainly drove me, and then as time went on, the leadership side, you don't just become a good leader, you actually got to go through experiences and want to learn all those sort of things to do that. So that, to me, was an important factor to try and contribute to the team to be successful.
One of the things that's said about great athletes is, whilst they may be the most talented, obviously the most celebrated, they're often the loneliest.
I think it can be a lonely spot. And there's certainly times when you have everyone looking at you for direction and you're not sure who to turn to for help or advice or whatever. Yeah, it can be. And I think my first couple of years as captain of the All Blacks, it was a wee bit like that. Like, a lot of experienced players are around me who are older, they'd actually been captain before, and so part of me was wondering what they were thinking and, you know, am I the right person for that? And not long after I'd been the Crusader captain, I was desperate to make sure I fitted in with all the guys, so I almost went out of my way to be one of the boys, and one of the older fellas pulled me aside and said, what are you doing? I said, oh, just acting normal, be one of the boys. And he said, you've been a dick, you know? I was, what do you mean? He goes, just be yourself. And I was like, man, I'm actually trying too hard to fit in. Actually, I just need to be who I am and drive the team. They'll get in behind that. And it comes back to the question, you know, what's most important, being respected or being liked? And that doesn't mean they're mutually exclusive, but to me, I realised that being respected is the most important thing. So people, how do you earn respect? It's through your actions and what you do, how often you do that, your consistency, all those sort of things. After a while, I realised that you're not going to be everyone's best mate in the team, but there's a group of guys that all thought similarly. I know in the All Blacks and we went through a lot together. You know, we all got on really well, but we're all there to really make sure the team was successful. And I guess those sort of bonds around going through experiences, good and bad, started to become pretty strong. And so it turned out to me, the way I looked at it, not as lonely. And the last thing I'd say is, 2007, when the quarterfinal didn't go so well, that was a lonely spot to be on the field when you didn't know what to do. I think opening yourself up and being vulnerable and saying, I don't have all the answers, people actually want to help, and then it all of a sudden becomes a bit more shared than it was when you're thinking you need to know it all.
Having seen you address teams when you're giving speeches and things like that, it's actually interesting to see that you don't often talk a lot about your wins.
So if you go to 2007, we'd reasonably successful leading up. We were the favourites. Things have gone pretty well for me as a captain for the 2 years leading into it, and we had a team that thought was good enough, we had enough talent, all those sort of things. But when it came down to it in a quarter-final, we didn't have the answers, and standing out in the field in Cardiff, not knowing what to do, was a pretty horrible feeling. And after that, the scrutiny and the chat and the criticism of what had gone wrong was pretty hard to take, but kind of in that moment, you got a choice to either learn from that or make excuses, blame everyone else and do all that. And I've always said since I finished, people ask me for a few years after that, what's the worst time as a professional rugby player? I'd say that moment in Cardiff in 2007. As horrible as that was as a rugby player and a captain, that kind of changed what happened for the next 8 years that I was involved. It caused us to look at the things that are different about World Cups, dealing with pressure, dealing with big moments, stuff that we hadn't ever really addressed before. And I guess as a captain, that became a real intrigue. Not only did you want to be better as a rugby player, but actually how do I be better as a captain so that when the big moments come along and it could go either way, what are you going to do?
I guess the reason I brought that up is the point is even though you didn't have the answers, you were determined to go out and get them. And that's not always easy.
Well, you got to accept when that you haven't got all the answers. And when you're the captain, the last thing you want to do is put your hand up and say, I don't have the answers. But it's amazing when you do that, you realise it's not just a simple solution here or there. There's a lot of little things that go into it, and a lot of people feel the same sort of thing.
Obviously, in a team environment, there are so many others that you need to bring along with you on these journeys. Like when you're trying to improve, when you're trying to make change, what about those who it's confronting, it's challenging, and it's going to force them to take a hard look in the mirror?
The first thing is you've got to exhibit the behaviours you expect yourself, and that's hard. But playing professional sport and trying to be the best in the world, if you thought it was anything but, then you're probably doing the wrong thing. And then you can start to ask questions, and you start with the guys who are leading the team. It's not a confrontational thing necessarily, it's just like, how good do we want to be? Are we wanting to be the best in the world or the world champions, or are we just lip service? And it's amazing when you start to have some of those conversations, you start to strip it all back and get to, where everyone's desire is. And when you've got a group that are leading the team like that, it's easy for them in their own ways to take the guys that they play with in certain positions and stuff. And so then the level of training goes up a little bit. And then in the big moments, that's when your leaders need to step up and have been through them before, is to show the way. I remember in a game that went down to the wire, and one of the young fellas afterwards said, when I was most worried, I just looked at you and you looked like you had it under control. I thought, man, I probably didn't have it under control, but amazing what the influence of how you hold yourself in those moments can have on guys around you.
One of the things that the All Blacks were great at was coming off these amazing highs, going back to zero every week, which is way easier said than done.
The toughest thing in sport, I alluded to at the start, is how you back up performance after performance. As a team, if it's because you lost last week, it's easy to get motivation to do everything. So you don't really need to think about it a lot. But if you've gone and had an amazing performance, what is it that's that real deep desire to do it again? And I think you've got to set that up with how good, again, I come back to how good do you want to be? Do you want to be a team that only performs sort of when you get a kick in the pants, or you're a team that no matter what the situation, who you're playing, you're going to go and put a performance together? And that takes real discipline to do that. But the good thing about the All Blacks is people expect you to perform every week. And it's just not a great feeling when you've played poorly, even if you've won. You want to actually perform every week because that's what people expect. And that's a great thing, I think. And it helps.
One thing for me about learning about the All Black environment, it's like on TV, people see you doing these amazing things every Saturday. But there's an entire week that goes into it. And like a lot of the congratulations that go on after the game, I thank you for that week. How hard is it to maintain it throughout the whole week? And how on does everyone in that environment have to be to get to Saturday and be in a really good spot?
This is what young players, I guess, are always trying to learn, what it is going to allow me to perform on Saturday. And for me, I had a pretty good structure knowing the things I needed to do, and it included getting away from the game as well. Like, you got to be careful of the perception of, getting the week right doesn't mean you go and train more than you normally would. It doesn't mean you don't have time away from thinking about the game, but it's getting the things needed so that come the end of the week you're dialed in and know exactly what your role is and you're feeling good, all those things so that you got a good chance. I'd take half an hour on a Friday night and I'd just, first of all, think about how I'd gone for the week in terms of how much thought I'd put into actually how I'm going to get the job done that I want to do. And if I haven't spent as much time as I probably should have, I would take 30 minutes just thinking about the game and go, right, how am I actually going to have an impact? How am I going to serve the team, you know, my role in that to really make an impact? And I was never one thinking about visualisation, all that sort of stuff, until I sort of realised that when I played well, I was actually doing that just naturally because I love thinking about what I'm going to do. So I just would take time to go, okay, I've got the tools I need this week to go and have an impact. And that's kind of how I tried to always view the game, not just you making up numbers, actually where is your impact? Where are the points you can actually serve the team? And got excited by that.
This fearlessness that you have to go in and chuck your body on the line and do the things you do, like, does it sometimes scare you, the things you're willing to do on that field in order to win?
It scares me that I don't do that because there'd be time to do something else. If I'm not prepared to do that, then I'm not going to be as good as I want to be and I'm not going to serve the team well. So it was the moment I had to think about whether I was prepared to do that. I think it was time to do something else. So it was never really a question. But the reason you want to do that was the thing, like what's driving you to do that? And I, for a long time, sort of wondered. There's obviously a personal drive of how good you want to be, and you know to be good, you got to go and do that. But it's also to earn the respect and trust of the guys beside you. At the end of the day, that's the most important part, is inspiring the guys beside you. And people from outside or watching on TV, they often don't necessarily get a full appreciation of those things. But the people beside you do. They know when you've done that, and I know when they've done that. And that's where you start to have things that are invisible that others don't, is when you've got people prepared to do that. And so that's what I used to judge it by. And the thing that used to make me feel the best is when you're sitting in a changing room like this beside a guy and you just sort of, and he's becoming, mate, I saw you do that, or, you know, shit, that made a difference. Like, they know. And that's the bit that I loved. And that's why you go and do it. Because
you demanded so much of your teammates, do you feel like any of them might have taken it the wrong way in the moment, but later on were thankful that you were, I guess, so demanding of them to lift their performance?
I kind of make no apologies if people didn't, like, that's what I believed was, you know, and people always have a debate around whether that's the way to go about things, but that's what I believed. And, you know, maybe other ways to do it, but that was the bit that I got inspired by, with people that got in, rolled their sleeves up and asked people to follow them. And that's the way I wanted to lead and play. And the group of guys we had, I think, all respected each other for doing those things. And I guess, you know, you can, if you start judging on results, you know, things started to work out okay in that regard. Is there another way? Probably might be, but certainly from what I can see at the highest level, where the margins are small. And the great thing about rugby is you're reliant on 15 guys all doing their bit to be successful. You know, there's no point sitting here in the changing room afterwards knowing that someone took a shortcut or didn't do what was needed. You want to know, even if it didn't go your way, everyone did what they needed to do. And you'd be silly not to say it if you thought that. And I'd hope they'd say it to me if I wasn't doing it. And, you know, if that's uncomfortable, well, that's life. We're not here to be comfortable. We're here to do something, be successful. It is uncomfortable.
You don't talk about your wins a lot. Is there a moment that sticks out for you as, I don't know, the greatest, or something that was most special to you?
The games that stick out the most, like the 2011 final here at Eden Park, you know, we went through what happened in 07. You know, we went up and down for a couple of years, and we still didn't know if we had the tools to deal with the biggest moment. And the last 15 minutes, when we were 1 point up, we relied on every one of us to do our bit. This is what I've wanted to know for the last 4 years. Have I learned? Can I handle this? And we got there, and it was sheer relief. But reflecting afterwards, it was like, man, I'm glad we got tested, because I got to see how far we'd actually come from 4 years earlier. That one certainly sticks out. And the World Cup final in 2015, I kind of knew it was going to be my last game, and I didn't want to limp to the end and just sort of be there making up numbers just because you're a captain. I really wanted to be still the best player to wear the number 7. And one of the things I was proud of is it's probably one of my better games in that 4-year period was that last game I played. So, and yeah, obviously to finish off, that period like that was hugely satisfying, and that was probably the first time I was like, I don't need to worry about it tomorrow or next year or next week. It was the time I really reflected on what we'd been able to achieve.
Yeah, you're one of the great minds of the game, my friend, and we are lucky to still have you in and behind the team, so appreciate it.
Cheers.
Awesome, thanks Richie.
No problems.